You don't treat me this way. I'd invite you into my home, invite you to see my family, to see my daughter. Hi everyone, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and as you can tell from my intro, this is a film franchise board game that I know little to nothing about. Yes, I'm going to have to stress that point right now, and I apologise profusely, but today I am reviewing the slightly big box from Cool Me or Not, The Godfather. And I have to stress, I've not watched a single movie of the Godfather franchise. Okay, alright, I get it. I really should watch these movies. Well, the first two anyway, I hear the third's really bad. But it's on my list, it's just, I can only watch so many movies. And Mafia is not necessarily a movie theme that I go towards, I don't aim for it. But at some point I'll watch The Godfather. So what is The Godfather all about? Well, in this game, you are vying for control over territories in 1950s New York. The idea is that you are each playing a rival family and you are sending thugs out to various businesses in New York in order to gain money, gain illicit things like guns and drugs, that sort of thing. Theme is darkish in that respect for kids. And, with these items and money that you collect, you are also sending your family members out to elicit control over a lot of territories and get even stronger abilities from these businesses. They call it shake down the front and the back of the businesses. I'm sure that's a term that's used a lot in Mafia speak or in The Godfather, but like I say, not watch the franchise, so stick with me on that. But the idea is basically there's two halves to every building, and thugs will use the bottom bit and the family members will use the top bit. That's essentially how the mechanic works. In each round, you are collecting these resources, you are collecting money, you are performing jobs, which is basically cashing a card with the required illicit tools and that required, like firearms, etc., and you'll get money. Now, it's about having the most money at the end of the game, but there's a bit of a twist. It's not just simply, oh, I've got a ton of money. What you have to do, though, is you have to launder this money in a nice little metal suitcase. It's really cool, actually. I'll try and get the components out to show you, but what you're doing is you're effectively hiding this money from the Godfather himself. So you take this money, you use it to do various jobs and stuff in the game each round and bribe allies to your cause, but to win the game you must launder them in a little suitcase in order to actually score them later. It's a really neat little twist, and gotta say, component quality for this game, pretty solid. I mean, the board it's a unique style of artwork. It's alright, it's a little blandish, but it works. It's easy to tell what's what. These suitcases are really cool though. I mean, they've got different labels on them for the countries. They're metallic, they're little tins, and they also make a very good way to store components in the game. Which is kind of weird actually, because the insert itself is rather odd. It's giving you room for all these cases. Great, that's perfect. I'll just slot that back in there. It then gives you, trays for the miniatures. Yes, this is Cool Me or Not, so there you go. There's a bunch of miniatures for you in a couple of rows. That's all fine and dandy. But then it gives you this. You're probably wondering why that's empty. Well, because there's no point in it. There really is no point. In there are the business tiles that I use in the game. That top bit is supposed to be your player markers. Now, they don't even fill up all of these rows when you actually use them in this insert, but they can just be put into the suitcases. And these two are supposed to hold cards, but they can go into suitcases as well, which makes this, apart from the tiles, completely pointless. So shouldn't the box have been a bit smaller? I don't know. It's a minor weird thing, but yeah, it's basically I've got a piece of plastic in there that really is doing nothing apart from holding some room tiles. It's a bit odd in that respect. But the components and the miniatures are pretty decent. They're unique sculpts, and they're technically named after characters in the Godfather world, I believe. However, before you get too strung up on this whole Godfather thing, The theme is pretty light. Not saying it's abstract, it's there. There's definitely a strong mafia theme here. But there's not a very strong Godfather theme here. If you're buying this purely because you love the movies, you might be slightly disappointed with how slightly taped on the theme is. You know, it does. You could. What I played this game and enjoyed it without knowing anything about the films whatsoever. You don't need to know anything about the films to get enjoyment from this game. The mafia theme is strong enough, but don't base it on the movies. I mean, your family members are named unique characters. I don't know who they are, and when I look at the scope, I'm not even going to remember who they are. It's just, this is another family member. This is another thug. You know, whatever you want to call them, but do not use that as a basis. Otherwise, though, the game itself plays pretty well, actually. I was expecting, you know, a bit less from this, actually, because I thought, oh, it's cool mini or not, it's more miniatures. Will this have substance? It actually does, because you've got a mix of everything that you're trying to do. You've got to launder the money and score it later, which is similar to what I love about Valley of the Kings, the little deck builder, where you only score the cards that you put in the tomb. You have to get them out of your deck and put them into the scoring thing. This is similar. You have to get the money out of your hand and stick it in your case. And every round, you have a hand limit, because anything above that, whether it's job cards or illicit resources or money, has to be paid in tribute to the Godfather himself. And so you have to be careful about, oh, I could hoard all this stuff, but oh wait, Godfather's going to nick all that. Oh, that's a shame. You got to get it in your suitcase as quick as you can. But you also need to have the jobs and the illicit resources in your hand to be able to actually do more jobs and do various cool stuff. The tightness in terms of area control is pretty high as well. I mean, you will be fighting each other, quite literally, to get control of these territories, and it can get quite backstabbery and cutthroat in that respect. Especially when you throw in the allied cards, which are people that you can bribe at the end of a round, and some of them can mess you over quite religiously for, you know, that sort of thing. And also the job cards themselves, they'll range from get a ton of money to do shenanigans with your hand. But be wary, there is also a lot of job cards that basically just say kill off a guy. And they end up in the Hudson River and they're just out for the round. But your whole strategy and your whole game plan can be messed over quite a lot by just having one guy taken out. Let alone if somebody pulls a car bomb on you and actually rids everybody in the turf. So you might feel a little bit hard done sometimes in this game, and you are going to have to know that going in. This has the occasional moment where it does feel quite punishing. Of course, that depends on how much you're in the lead, and also how much you just happen to be standing in that person's way. Of course, you can do it back to them, so it's very give and take. The turn sequences themselves are actually relatively quick. You'll each take it in turn to do an action until you've used up all your characters. And there's some actions like performing a job, etc. that you can do without necessarily using a character up, subject to other restrictions. The turns are actually pretty quick. It shouldn't take you too long to think about what you're doing on your next turn, or on the turn after that even, and so the rounds can play out quite quickly. Granted, new players sometimes struggle with knowing exactly what the best move is and what they're aiming for, but it tends to pick up relatively quickly, and rounds don't take too long. That whole action selection part where you're placing guys down on the board and doing jobs and taking out other people, that's pretty much the crux of what the game is. The rest of the round is mostly sort of admin and, scoring. You will get control of territories, and I like how if you have control of a territory, if somebody goes to that area with a thug, you also get the benefit as well as they do. So that influences what people want to do. It's like, oh, I really need those firearms from that shop, but if I do that, I'm going to give him firearms as well. But then it's like, oh, everybody's really gunning for money at the moment and laundering ability. Well, you know what? I've got control of this territory now, so yeah, go and launder your money. I'm going to do it too, though. You better realise that. So there's a lot of, do I want this person to have all this extra benefit for doing nothing over what I personally need? So there's a lot of interesting choices you have to make. It's certainly not an autopilot game. There was plenty to do. I do wish, however, was more past the victory. You are pretty much just getting money in your case. Now, you usually do this from completing a ton of job cards, or just literally doing stuff in the buildings to get money. You also get bonuses at the end for completing various categories of job cards. And so the job cards become like a crux of the game. If you're not doing enough of those jobs, you're going to struggle, I think. The money itself, yes, you can get it from businesses, but you'll never get it in quite as high a quantity as if you were doing actual job cards as well. Especially as some of those spaces might get taken up by other people, in which case, well, you're going to have to find another way. You also get bonus money for controlling territories, and by controlling territories, I mean having the most markers in a territory, because every round you put a marker on to say if you control it, most markers in a territory wins dominance at the end of the game, gets bonus money. So there's various ways. You're basically doing the jobs or you're doing area control. That's kind of the two ways you can go about it. And so the game has started to get a little samey after several plays, especially with the same group of people. This is a cool one to bring out with different people, I think, because the way people play it will differ quite a lot. But yeah, you're basically either focused on area control or you're focused on jobs. There's not much else to it. And I'm not a fan of games where you don't use a lot of the board if you have less players. Paragrid's got this problem. I mean, okay, I don't like Paragrid generally, but with that one, if you have less than the maximum number of players, half the map gets cut off. Well, here, you put businesses on based on the number of players, but there's, I think, 7 or so territories in this game, 7 or 8, and the first 4 or 5 will get completely clogged up with businesses and be used and be subject to a lot of activity. But the other ones barely fill up, and only just fill up entirely if you've got maximum players. I don't always want to play this with maximum players. I quite like playing it with 3 or 4. I don't have to play it with the whole high count of 5. And if you're only playing this with 2 players, you're barely using any of the board at all. So you find that some of the territories become so good for putting family members on because you get to use everything in that territory. And some territories kind of just get left by the wayside because it's like, well, I could go there, but there's only one business in there. I'm not that desperate to control it. So I wish that it was more balanced across the table as to how many businesses ended up in every single region, because you do get some that are left out. It's a small little nitpick, but yeah, it's a flaw when playing this with less players than the maximum number of 5. But generally, scores, can be quite tight if people know what they're doing. I feel that if you have played the game before and you're teaching new players, generally you're going to kind of dominate them because you'll understand more about getting the money in your case and balancing out the, needing to do jobs but also do area control. So new players will probably find their first game as a learning one and they'll probably lose it, but stick with it though, because despite the theme being a little taped on, and I'm only talking from the Godfather perspective, not the Mafia theme. The Mafia theme is actually pretty strong, but the Godfather theme is really light. Despite that though, bear in mind, I've never watched any of the Godfather films, so that doesn't bother me. You just call this the Godfather or the Mafia or something, I don't know, or the Big Man in Black, and I will still enjoy the game for what it is. It's a decent area control game with a mix of hand management and some cool little take that elements here and there. Doesn't usually take too long. In fact, the time quoted is 16 to 90 minutes. That's relatively accurate. I mean, 60 you're only really going to do that with 2, maybe 3 players. And even then, a little bit concerned. 90 minutes is actually relatively accurate. However, 4 or 5 players with new players might set you back to somewhere between 90 to 2 hours. No chance this game should take you more than 2 hours, even with teaching. I've never seen that happen. 2 hours max with a high number of players, but it is possible to do this in 60 with 2 and easily to get it around 90. So it doesn't overstay its welcome, and that's another good quality about it. I actually kind of enjoyed it. My problem, the biggest thing that hurts it though, is the fact that I fear the replay value is going to suffer because there's only area control and the jobs that you're really doing. And I don't know if that's... I feel like I'm doing the same thing every game. Like, this game I dominated because I did a lot of jobs. This game I also dominated because I did a lot of jobs. And this game I dominated because I did a lot of jobs. I don't find myself doing much else apart from doing the job cards. The area control is kind of like a side thing to me. I've tried focusing on it once before. It didn't win me the game, but, it was still fun to do. But I just think there needs to be a little bit more variation in this. It's almost like it's kind of a one-trick pony. It does what it sets out to do pretty well, but it doesn't offer much more on top of that, unless they expand this with some extra tiles, some extra, cards, maybe an extra mechanic, a subboard or something. there's ways you could expand this and make it a little bit more, maybe a little bit more varied. But that's my biggest killer. I find that eventually I'm just going to get bored playing the same sort of thing every time, and especially when I'm teaching it to new players. But it is still fun. So I wish it was a smaller box. It didn't need to be that big. They're using miniatures, yes, but the theme is pretty light. And like I showed you with the insert, you really don't need a good quarter of the insert in this box. So they could have made this smaller, I think. But like I say, graphic design, pretty easy to tell. Artwork, meh. The cards have only got the same artwork across them, which is a bit lame. Seriously, could they not have put some unique artwork on the cards? I feel that was kind of poor judgment, really. I mean, if you're going to go to the effort of making unique sculptures for your miniatures, why not have the artwork unique as well? That just seemed a bit, lazy. But like I say, these things aside, still an enjoyable game. So I'm going to say that Godfather Coleons, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it properly, but The Godfather, from Cool Money or Not, deserves a respectable 7 bodies in the Hudson River. It is a decent area control and hand management game. It will work fine with 2 to 5 players, but certainly you'll get more out of it, I think, with more players than less. Of course, this will up the game length. I fear that replay value is going to be an issue with this, and if you are solely buying this because you love The Godfather, you might be disappointed at how little it really matters. But if you like Mafia-style games and a bit of Take That, this is definitely one you should check out. So that's it for me. I'm going to head on to other reviews and, be nice to each other. If you're going to put them in the Hudson River, it's still only a game at the end of the day, okay? See you next time, guys.